Okay, welcome everybody to our online session tonight about the struggle for the 4-day week. I'm Clara Paylard. I'm a member of Unite the Union and member of Troublemakers at Work. The session tonight is in partnership with my organization, Tipping Point UK. Troublemakers at Work was formed as an ongoing organization after our 2023 conference. We held a conference in 2024. We organize democratically and without affiliation to any political organization or particular union. We've got a range of aims, including encouraging unionization of workers, build workers' collective power and collective action, democracy in our union and grassroots organizing with some international solidarity. And you can find out a little bit more on the website. I'll just share the link there for you to have a look. The idea of holding an online event about the 4-day week came out of the Troublemaker at Work conference held last autumn. We had a breakout space for different sectors at some point. And in my breakout, the not-for-profit sector, we all had some concern in common. Stress and burnout of workers in the sector was quite high, and we often support some of the most vulnerable people in society, such as homeless people, disabled people, people in care, people living with addiction, and many others. And our sector has faced huge drops in staffing and income in the past decades, with cuts in social services and local authority. And so we've often struggled to argue for pay rises when management has pitched our pay against the services we deliver and the people we support. And we've heard some of our colleagues have been campaigning for reduction of working hours without cuts in pay. And there were like numerous campaigns in workplaces for a 4-day week. So I'm really pleased tonight that we're going to explore this topic a little bit more with 4 fantastic contributors. Thank you so much for giving us your time. First, we'll hear from Lindsey, who is from the 4-day week campaign. He's going to give us a bit of an overview of what we actually mean by 4 days week. You know, we already had quite a few questions about different approaches the employers may try to go for, such as a condensed working week or reduction of hours with cut in pay, but that's not what we aim for. And we'll hear what the campaign has achieved so far. And then we're going to hear from 3 trade union reps who are at different stages of their campaigns. They're going to share some of their experience with us. We'll hear from Delphine Schlosser, who is a Unite rep at Frontline AIDS, who's just started a campaign. Then we'll hear from Alex Reed, a PCS rep at DEFRA, who's mounted a campaign and produced an interesting report that we'll share in the chat when he speaks. And finally, Ben Davies, a Unite rep at Shelter, who actually won a trial of the 4 days week in their workplace. So I'm really looking forward to hear from you all. After the speakers, we will open the floor to you to ask questions and share your own experience if you have campaigned for a reduced working week. We do hope to keep the last half hour for some breakout discussion and some feedback before we conclude the event at 8:30. I think that's all from me at the moment, and I'm going to now pass on the mic to Phil.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. Great to see so many people here. I'm just going to share my screen there. So yes, my name is Phil Lindsey. I'm from the 4-Day Week Foundation. We've just changed our name in the last week. So we were the campaign, now we're the foundation, just to reflect that we, the broadening scope of what we're up to. And I'm here to talk to you today about something which I hopefully, a number of you will always already be aware of, which is that the 4-day week is a trade union issue. But as Clara spoke about before, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of what we mean by a 4-day week first. And by we, I do mean the 4-day week foundation. So what do we mean by a 4-day week? Often when we're talking about the 4-day week, we mean something roughly around the 100-80-100 model, which is the idea of doing 100% productivity in 80% of the time for 100% of the pay. Now, this is the rough idea. Not every kind of work is going to fit into this model, but it has got the basic components of what a 4-day week should be, is that you are aiming to reduce the working hours without reducing the pay. So no reduction in pay, but reducing those hours. The main theory behind it being that if you are better rested, that you're more productive while you are at work. So per hour, you're more productive. So you're able to achieve around about 100% of your productivity, but in 80% of the time. That's sort of the rough idea, but it's a bit more complicated than that. Organizations that switch over to a 4-day week tend to see better recruitment, better retention. They are full of workers who are, surprise, surprise, much healthier from being better rested, not being burnt out. So there's fewer sickness absences, things like that. So that's, all those things combined together to mean that an organization doesn't lose out by reducing those working hours. So that is the rough model. Usually a 4-day week as we mean it is around 32 hours, but we see anything from between 28 to 36 hours. That's usually the sort of the gap we tend to see. You wouldn't want to see a 4-day week go beyond 36 hours, because then you're into compressed hours territory, which is more of a flexible working issue. Compressed hours being you take your full-time hours and you just squeeze them into 4 days, which again, some workplaces do offer that as a flexible working option. We've got nothing against that. It's definitely good that people have the right to kind of ask for flexibility with their hours. We think that's a good move, but that's not a 4-day week. A 4-day week is reducing those hours without reducing the pay. So that's what we look for. The main thing here, the 4-day week is how you get into the conversation. What you are looking for is a meaningful reduction in your working hours. Because as I said, there's tons of different workplaces with different styles of work going on, different ways that a 4-day week might work for you wherever you work. But you're looking for that meaningful reduction in working hours, something that gives you back a bit more autonomy in your life. The 4-day week is flexible. Some people get it in their heads that if we all move over to a 4-day week, that the pubs would be shut on a Friday, that the hospital will be shut on a Friday, that you wouldn't be able to do anything on a Friday. Obviously, that's not the case. Many different kinds of 4-day week. Monday to Thursday, classic model. Tuesday to Friday, also another model. You could have a workplace where different teams are on different kinds of 4-day week. It can be done on an individual basis. We also see in some workplaces that they offer the hours of a 4-day week, so 32 hours, for instance, to some people and say you can spread them over 5 days. If you have, for instance, caring responsibilities and you need to sort of pick people up or pick children up and drop them off and whatnot, then you can spread them out. Again, the main thing here is that we are meaningfully reducing those working hours. So that's roughly what we mean by the 4-day week. But how do we know that it's a trade union issue? Because we see new campaigns popping up all the time. The 4-day week Foundation is supporting about 24 live campaigns at the moment, and that's really picked up in the last 1.5 to 2 years. And as we'll talk about later, that there's a few of those campaigns have been successful already. So that's one thing that we know. We also see a lot more unions passing motions, whether that's to affiliate to the 4-day week Foundation or whether that's to make sure that the union is campaigning actively to achieve a 4-day week. We've seen a lot more of that. Union leaderships are starting to take notice, particularly in unions like PCS. We've had a lot of engagement with the leadership there. We've also been approached by various unions, education departments, because there is an increased demand from members to build workplace campaigns. So alongside them, we've been developing workshops that actually deal specifically with how to build a workplace campaign for a 4-day week. And again, that's something that's really picked up in recent times. Lastly, obviously, a very obvious point is that time away from work has always been a union issue. The weekend was won by the unions. It's only right that the 4-day week is also won by union members as well. So that's how we can tell. But why now? Why is it really, why is it picked up now? So there are a number of reasons. First and foremost, COVID had a huge impact, as a pandemic will do. Many people reevaluated their priorities, particularly around their relationship with work. People kind of began to really value their time and particularly autonomy with time, the ability to choose what they do with it. That's something that really picked up during the COVID pandemic, and it hasn't gone away. It's definitely here to stay. Just the other week, Randstad, they're an organization that do an annual work survey called Work Monitor. And they did they've got a very important question in there around the motivation to stay in or change your job. What would motivate you to stay in or change your job? And the number one reason was work-life balance. This is huge because it's the first time that work-life balance has beaten out pay for that top spot. So no longer is pay the thing that is most motivating people. It's that work-life balance, and that's kind of why there's an increasing push for the 4-day week. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason why it's now is because pay is linked to it. Pay isn't what it used to be. It really isn't. I'm sure I'm not the only person here who is seeing their chance of maybe buying a house or even a flat sort of fading into the distance. It's my pay isn't going to quite cover it. So it's about thinking about what other things we can do to improve our lives. Pay isn't what it used to be because of the long arm of austerity, the cost of living crisis. Even when we've had to fight for our pay awards, they are often lackluster. Even when we take strike action, we're getting limited results around pay. So union groups are getting creative with their demands, and in their pay claims, they're putting in things like the 4-day week as an extra lever to pull. Because if unions come in and they say, right, here's we're looking for a pay rise of X, and your employer is stopping at Y, you need something to bridge that gap, something that's worthwhile, worth it for a union member. And the 4-day week is a good thing to have in there that's worthwhile going for. Also around pay rises often outpaced by inflation recently, or by price gouging by the corporations who actively inflate their prices. Whereas once the working week is reduced, it tends to stay that way. It's a permanent win. It generally tends to be a permanent win. So it's worth fighting for in that respect. And then the next reason is technological advances. We've had a few advances since the 5-day week was implemented. 5-day week came in, I think one of the first places was Henry Ford's factories. Cars come in more colors than just black now. That things have changed quite significantly, for better or worse. We email each other now. We have personal computers. We have a lot more automation, a lot more robotics. Technology has really picked up the pace of productivity. But that hasn't been converted into more time for workers. It's often just been converted into profits. And it's about sort of us trying to establish some time of work time justice. Average work time reduction has stalled since the 80s, even with all this advancement. There was a general nice pattern of our working time was decreasing. And then since the 80s, it's not flatlined, but it's much, much slower. So the campaign for a 4-day week is about getting this back up and running. We're right on the cusp of another big leap in productivity with AI coming into focus. And we're sort of met with a real issue here, which is that if we don't fight for some kind of justice as AI comes in, we're going to have to accept mass redundancies. And I know that's not where any of us want to be. It's almost a Loom 2.0. Look, the Luddites get a bad rap, but they had it right. If something speeds up production, then we should be working less. That's just, that's something that we need to be making sure that we're fighting for. Lots of unions have a new technology agreement that they're working on, or new technology agreements. 4-day week should be included. Lastly, why now? Because we can win. We can win a 4-day week. We're not asking for the moon. It is a believable, achievable goal. It is being achieved. Just last week, we announced that 200 accredited companies, about 5,000 workers, are all officially on a 4-day week. We know the number is much larger than that, so it is something that can be won. There's enough evidence out there of success that everyone can make a really compelling case in their workplace for a 4-day week to their colleagues and also to their bosses. People will join a union and they will fight for a 4-day week. We're working with the Unite group at the moment, who've reported that their membership has spiked since they started their campaign for a 4-day week, because people are excited to be fighting for it. PCS, I mean, Alex is going to speak in a minute, but they had an incredible launch event, loads of excitement around their campaign for a 4-day week. The CWU have reached out to our foundation because they want to use the 4-day week as something central to organize around, to invigorate members, to make them more active. So, you know, people will join a union and they will fight for it. People know it's winnable, so they want to go and win it. And that's why it's a trade union issue. So now let's go and win it. At the end, I will hopefully be putting around a little survey for people to fill out if they want to fill out, that essentially just opens the door for anyone building individual workplace campaigns. Fill out the survey if you'd like us to support you with building that campaign, sharing all the evidence on the research that we know, and all of the lessons we've learned from supporting other union campaigns. Please do fill out that survey. And that is it from me. I probably talked far too much already, so I'm going to pass it on.
Thank you so much, Phil, for this really useful overview. We will circulate your form, after the event. If you want to share it in the chat at the end, feel free to do so. And I've also shared the website for the foundation, as well as a model motion that Delphine wrote a few weeks ago. And Delphine is going to be our next speaker. She's a Unite rep in Frontline AIDS. And yeah, do you want to share what your experience has been so far?
Yeah, thanks, Clara. Thanks, Phil. So yeah, like Clara just said, I'm a Unite rep, workplace rep at a charity called Frontline AIDS. My update will be fairly short because we're still quite early on in our campaign. But yeah, Frontline AIDS is an international NGO based in Brighton as well as South Africa. And we're working on the global HIV response with lots of different countries. We're relatively small. We've got about 80 staff members across various countries, so mainly in the UK, but we've also got an office and a team in South Africa and individual colleagues in different countries, which adds a different dimension to the conversation as well. So basically, we've had this conversation among the union group at Frontline AIDS for probably about 2 years. But when we started that conversation, we decided to park it initially just because there was lots of other issues going on with the organization and some instability. But we picked up that conversation, I think it was last summer, around, maybe July last year. And so we had some discussion, and then we had a vote among our members to decide whether it's a priority we wanted to push and if we wanted to really start campaigning for the 4-day week at Frontline AIDS. And we had a really kind of, I think everyone voted for, basically. So yeah, quite a lot of appetite amongst our union membership. And the reason is like Phil explained just now, I think there's all those issues of stress at work, which can be quite difficult in charities as well, because as Phil also and Clara mentioned, people can be quite pushed to fulfill the mission of the charity. So yeah, I think people continue to have issues with finding a good work-life balance, and with the workload, the stress, we've had quite a lot of burnout. So yeah, I think that's why everyone really is quite keen and energized by the prospect of a 4-day week. And like Phil mentioned about the pay issue, again, that's something that's especially difficult for a charity because I guess there's just some of the arguments that might work better in the commercial sector if the company is doing well and making a profit, that are very difficult for us in charities to push. And especially with the quite difficult financial environment, I think for most charities in the last few years, it's very difficult for us to get adequate pay increases. So we keep basically losing income every year. So the 4-day week is really interesting in that in theory, it can be a cost-neutral measure for the organization because of retaining the same level of output. So yeah, that's also something that makes it very interesting for us when we face a very difficult financial situation. And so yeah, since we had that vote in our union membership, so I've been in touch with the 4-Day Week campaign / Now Foundation. So, we've had some help from Phil and some of his other colleagues last year, which has really helped us to kind of think through and plan our campaign. And it's also been great to have so much interest amongst other Unite reps, because we also, got advice through that. So that's why I think those kind of meetings like we're having today are really great to, exchange information and, support each other. So after this vote last year, we created a working group within the union at first to start working on that campaign. And what we decided in our union working group was actually that we wanted to involve all staff from the beginnings and not just keep it within the union. And that's not what all organizations would choose to do. And in fact, we did get a bit of advice against that because of the pushback that you can get from management. In our organization, the reason why we decided to really involve all the staff from the beginning is because, like I said earlier, we have staff in different countries who obviously are not part of Unite. So we didn't really want to make it like a UK-focused campaign. So we did really start with having a session for all staff, which does mean that obviously our senior management was aware of the campaign straight away. So, that was a bit of a risk, but actually we haven't had any backlash so far, luckily. And in fact, our executive director, we did ask him before organizing our staff session last year. And, he didn't say we would get a 4-day week, but, he was interested in the debate, and he didn't, he allowed us to have that time during work hours. So that's quite encouraging. So we engaged with all staff in a meeting in November last year, and it was really encouraging because there was very good attendance and also a lot of engagement. So people were asking lots of questions. They were, really engaging. But at the same time, during that meeting, there were also quite a lot of concerns that were raised, and we could see some people actually, even though it feels like a no-brainer for staff, quite a few people were quite reluctant. So we tried to really answer all those concerns, and then what we did is we developed a FAQ to answer all the questions that kept coming back, because it's often the same we have from various people. So again, we were really lucky to build on some of the work that the 4-Day Week campaign did and a lot of other organizations. So we kind of had the basis to start our own FAQ, but then obviously just adding things more relevant to us. And also at that stage, because we really wanted to make sure the organization was, the campaign was organization-wide and not just the union, we invited non-union members to join our working group, and especially the point was to get people involved from other countries than the UK. So we were joined by one colleague from South Africa, but interestingly, we were also joined by a head of department, so someone who is actually part of our senior leadership team. And that's great, because that does mean that now we know we have an advocate on the senior leadership team. Obviously, that colleague is not representing the senior leadership team. She's there in our, as herself, but that does mean we do have someone to, push for the 4-day week on the senior team. And following that, we had kind of decided that before moving much further, we wanted to really get an idea of what the appetite across all staff was, because, in conversation and meetings, it's difficult because you often have just some, a few more vocal people who speak or raise questions. So what we decided was to run in January a survey amongst all staff. And again, it was really all staff, so across all locations and including our senior leadership team. And that was first to see there was enough appetite before we submit a formal proposal to the senior leadership team, and also to get more information to help us build our case. So, on all the relevant issues that are linked to the 4-day week. So all those topics around stress, workload, efficiency of processes and meetings, to start thinking about what we could improve, and also to understand any concern that staff had about the 4-day week. So we just had the survey results on Monday. Actually, we ran the survey for 3 weeks. And just to give you an idea, the main key point, I think, was the first, that the response rate was good. We had 61% response rate, which in itself is much higher than any other survey we've run as a union, or in fact that the organization ran. And that's including survey on pay. So last year, similarly, we ran a survey on pay, and actually we had not even half of those response rates. So yeah, it shows there's a very high interest from staff, and also probably not surprisingly, we had higher response rates among non-management staff and lower rates among management staff. And so, you know, from the survey, we had really high level of support for the 4-day week. 88% of the respondents were in favor of doing a pilot. There were a few that were unsure, but none that were against it. So that's reassuring. And that was also backed up by a lot of the comments. There were a lot of very positive comments, you know, people very keen to campaign for this and get a pilot at least as soon as possible. Other than that, the survey findings were not really surprising. They were, I would say, in line with what we knew already from just, you know, having spoken to our colleagues, having had those staff sessions before. So generally, you know, most people seem to be supporting the idea of the 4-day week, but there's also lots of concerns which keeps coming back about workload, about you know, practical questions. So, you know, for example, like how do we do with part-time staff and things like that. So it did show that people are still quite nervous, that not everything is kind of, you know, decided yet. But that's what we will keep explaining, that would all be for a planning stage. And yeah, I think there's still a few people who are quite reluctant, and it's really, I think it's just really difficult with some people to shift the mindset and make them believe that it's, you know, possible, and it's, you know, kind of the next stage of work with all the advances that we've had in technology. But again, the good thing is there's lots of evidence and we can learn from other campaigns. So yeah, hopefully we'll get there, convincing everyone. And then again, it was confirming things we kind of knew about quite high level of stress at work. So that's good because that can support our proposal when we put it forward. You know, we do now have all that data about level of stress and a lot of, you know, things like that. And also, it also showed, I think, though, that, and that's what we observed when we speak to people, I think people still don't always understand what we mean by the 4-day week. So I think that even though we keep re-explaining it, there's still some people who think we mean compressed hours, or that we mean we're going to reduce their pay. And that's particularly in the context where, again, the financial context for charity is quite difficult, and we might be looking at job cuts quite soon. So I think, you know, people sometimes get a bit confused. And we saw that in our survey as well. So yeah, just something for us to keep explaining to our colleagues. And also what we found is we also asked people if they would be ready to openly show support for the 4-day week, for example, through a petition, which could make the claim stronger. Unfortunately, there were much fewer people who were ready to do that than who actually support the 4-day week. But again, that's not something that's very surprising because of, you know, facing potential job cuts later in the year and, you know, the situation. So yeah, on that basis, we are now planning to prepare a formal proposal for senior management, and possibly to include that in the pay negotiation that's still ongoing for 2025. That's still something we need to discuss a bit more with our union member. But yeah, that's kind of our plan. We hope that could be planned for later in the year to actually pilot next year. But yeah, that's the next stage. So yeah, really keen to learn from the other reps here and hear how you want it. But for me, that's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Delphine, to share your experience with us. Really interesting, and some tips to learn. Thank you for writing the model motion as well, which includes some really interesting point about the impact on gender equality and also the environment. Okay, so next we're going to hear from Alex at PCS DEFRA. I believe your campaign is a little bit more advanced. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. So yeah, my name's Alex Reed. I'm a civil servant. I work for the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and speaking today in my capacity as a PCS rep. which is a union that organises across the civil service and also the commercial sector. Our group within PCS is called the DEFRA group. It represents a huge range of different types of work. Lots of people think civil servants are just people in double-breasted suits in Westminster. I am based in Westminster. I only get my top hat out on special occasions, but across our group, we have people that are working in forests, driving around with chainsaws, cutting trees down, people that work very remotely in rural locations, field-based work, people that go out on boats, people working in call centres, a huge kind of variety of work, as well as the kind of standard office work. It's also several thousand people across all the different employers, so it's quite a kind of complex picture. Our campaign, it started in 2023, emerged off the back of the strike wave, where a huge amount of grassroots organising across the employers and branches in our group emerged, and we were looking for a strong campaign that members could or might support during the kind of between battles for pay that Phil set out so nicely and bleakly at the start. We started the campaign with a motion to our group conference, as union campaigns tend to do. With the kind of passing of that, built a campaign with 3 elements that I'm going to talk through. So kind of organising to demonstrate the membership strength of feeling, using in-house research that supported our conversations with management, and also a kind of strategic and public-facing communications element that has all got us to where we are now in the campaign. So on the organising side, at the start of the campaign, we produced a kind of short booklet that set out to our members why we believed that a 4-day week was a trade union issue, and held basically a mass meeting with members across the group to see if they agreed with our proposal that this be something that we fight for. We had huge support in that meeting. 700 members turned up. There was a massive amount of interest and huge amount of questions, and there was the occasional kind of, as Delphine mentioned, there's people that had some concerns about how it might work in practice, but on the whole, massive amounts of people really positively interested in this as a proposal. Alongside that, or short from that meeting onwards, this was kind of November-ish 2023, we sent a petition round to our members asking them to sign it. If we reached a certain number of signatures, we would send it to our Secretary of State, Permanent Secretary, who is effectively the CEO of a government department, to go alongside our demand to trial a 4-day week. And also key in this is that we're not asking to go straight to a 4-day week. It's a massive, complicated organisation. We were asking to trial this idea, which had positive evidence then, and kind of, as you've seen, growing positive evidence behind what it can do in workplaces. And we were basically proposing to test whether this evidence could apply to our organisation, which seems like a reasonable demand. That petition was signed by 1,400 members, so really, really good response. And we sent it up to our Permanent Secretary in time for Christmas. That was helpful in acting as a kind of sort of structure test type thing to show how much support there was. The initial answer that came back was no, which we expected. After that response, our next step was to use some extra survey questions that went along with the petition, asking members, firstly, if they supported a 4-day week, but if they did say yes to that, how they thought it would improve their work and life. We had 1,200 members answer those questions, and that provided a really interesting kind of set of information that we used to put together a second booklet with more organisation-specific information focused on how our members thought it would improve their life. We made some kind of nice numbers from that, and used some real life examples of the benefits that people shared with us, which were often, incredibly, moving and touching. There's people who are in really kind of challenging life situations, trying to juggle really difficult caring responsibilities with a full-time job, and the very heartfelt, genuine reasons why a 4-day week would totally change their life for the better. Around the time of producing this, we also held in-person events in offices across our estate, which we have offices around the country. I think we had 6 or 7 in the end. Had really good turnout at pretty much all of them. There's a couple of kind of smaller offices where it was a smaller event. But we got some really good public speakers to those, including people from places that were already running trials, which the idea of these events was a couple of things. One, to show members that this was a reasonable ask, but also to have a kind of physical presence in the office. This was at a time when people were being asked to return to the office, but it was still quite tentative, and we wanted to have a kind of very visible demonstration of that support. Through a bit of serendipity, the HR director walked past the London event, which was the biggest one, which may or may not, we assume, probably helped secure some agreement from the department shortly after that to talk further about this. They hadn't agreed to anything, but they said they would happily, other than that, they would be interested in talking more to us about it. So that was the organising side that got us to that point of an agreement. In terms of the research, we have members who work in social research roles for their day jobs, and we spoke to them to talk about how we could get some additional evidence that would then support those conversations with management. We developed with them a survey, not a survey, a kind of interview that was I'm not a social researcher by trade, but they told us was very robust approach. That we could get reps to carry out with members across the different employees in the groups, asking workers about their working week and the makeup of it, their home life, what the different challenges were across each. The output of this provided kind of really interesting bit of qualitative research that showed quite why we really supported our argument that 4-day week is a really viable win-win, with productivity benefits potentially there, but also improving workers' lives. We also did some modelling of the cost saving the department could make based on some of the kind of outcomes from national trials and publicly available data about the department's workforce. Sorry, Claire, I'll try and talk really quickly. Estimated some really good savings there. So 21 million from recruitment costs, and then 300 more full-time employees per year from the reduction of sickness absence equivalent. We also had a kind of comms approach. So we aimed to add pressure at the employer at key points. So we had press releases out at the start of the campaign and also around the first official meeting with the employer. In the civil service, we're also in a position where the government is also ultimately in charge of our employment, which means there's a kind of big P political influence that is a key part of campaigning in the civil service. So, we held a parliamentary drop-in and used early day motions to build awareness among MPs, got members to write to their MPs as well. This pressure managed to get Number 10 to issue its official position. Its official position was that it doesn't plan to support a 4-day week, which doesn't sound like a win, but also it is a great success in kind of getting it on the agenda. So I guess just to wrap up, because that's kind of where we're at now. The talks with the employer are continuing, although there's no sign of trials yet. Ultimately, in the position we're in, I kind of believe that we need to use industrial strength to secure the win. It sounds like PCS's National Executive Committee have agreed to make the 4-day week part of national policy. So kind of next crucial part of the campaign for us is to try and secure 4-day week space in any future national campaign. And I will leave it there and pass on to the next speaker, Clara. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for sharing what you've done. Some amazing work there, and really getting some support across the membership. So well done, and we are looking forward to hear about your next steps. Thank you. And last but not least, we've got Ben from Shelter, Unite Rep at Shelter. And I believe you're like a little bit further down the line with your campaign. So looking forward to hear where you are at. And yeah, floor is yours, Ben.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Clara. I'm Ben, and I work in my day job on the fundraising team at Shelter in the northwest of England. As Clara said, I'm the Union Workplace Rep and Health and Safety Rep, and my constituency is the North and Midlands. And I'm pleased to be here. Thank you to Clara for the invite, and it was really interesting hearing from Alex, Delphine, and Phil. So yeah, this isn't a how-to or step-by-step guide. Every workplace and situation is completely different, but a bit of a potted history of what's happened so far, and a bit of a reflection of how the process has gone, how's it going, and some of the things we've done. Also, I think it's important to say that we're currently still in the process of trying to secure a 4-day week, and while hopefully it'll be in place, it isn't yet. So our reflections on this process might very well be different in the future once it's played out and the end results are in and stuff. Anyway, I hope it's of some use. So how did the trial come about at Shelter? It's been a bit of a long process, if being honest. So it's been a couple of years to get to this point, but the organisation is large, it is complex, it's got over 1,000 staff, and there are many, many different types of roles and jobs. So I have a bit of sympathy there with the organisation trying to get it in place. We used Autonomy's landmark study as a base for including it in a pay survey to members in 2023. 76% of members voted for it to be a priority in our pay negotiations. So then we submitted it in a pay claim where we asked for a trial and asked for Autonomy to come and present to our executive leadership team. Within that, we used the arguments around well-being, mental health, productivity, childcare costs, staff retention, reduction in the gender pay gap, and something I think all speakers have mentioned, the very real fact that it was and is really hard for charities to pay in line with inflation, and reducing hours without a loss of pay is a way to reward staff when organisations are struggling to do that. I mean, funnily enough, after we presented our pay claim, we were really lucky in that management said that they were already thinking about it, apparently. Now, we don't know whether that is the case and management did want to do it, or whether they had seen how popular it was within the workforce and sort of saw which way the wind was blowing and thought they'd rather get ahead of it and back it rather than challenge it. Either way, we agreed to a 6-month trial, reducing working hours up to 20% with no loss of pay from July 2024, so last July, up till January of this year. So that 6-month period, which in our organisation is a 30-hour week. So our contracted hours are 37.5. They went down to 30. So while that was a success, we still had to be organised and use our collective organisation and leverage in our subsequent pay claims to ensure that the length of the trial and that we as a union were getting full transparent information during the trial and after. And now we're at the stage where the trial's taking place and we're fighting over the if it's going to happen and when it's going to happen. So how do we go about, what advice would I give in trying to bring the reduced working hours 4-day week trial at your workplace? I mean, just the normal organising things, I guess, conversations with members early. I think there's something Phil said about getting them on side and thinking about it, that it's possible and achievable and beneficial. I mean, it's easy to convince members of the benefits of it because, I mean, who doesn't want a 4-day week? 4-day week and to work 1 day less, but showing them that it's possible can really get people behind it and make it tangible and real. So we used examples from other charities and organisations where it's been successful. We engage with members a lot to make them think about how it would work for them across the organisation. How would you do it if you're in services? How would you do it if you're in IT, finance? And get them really thinking about how real it could be. We included it in a pay survey and pay claim. And if you do have the capacity, phone bank people, get them to vote for it, get real popular legitimacy within the workforce for it. And I think that's part of the reason why our management went with it rather than against it, because they saw how popular it was. And in trying to get a trial, make sure any trial includes timelines. It's really important so that the 4-day week can't be sort of lost in an undefined time frame that management present and sort of kicking the can down the road. So once you get a trial, this is some of the things we did. So these might sound obvious, but I think they're important to state. Get regular meetings with management to make sure they're sharing as much as you can get from them. Transparency is really important. Make sure they're doing the trial properly and they're acting in good faith, and they do genuinely want to try it out. Again, fight over the timelines and make management stick to them. They're really important to show that members, that the organisation is serious about the trial. If management extend a timeline, make sure it's with your agreement. If not, really kick up a fight. It might not seem important, but it really is, because it's really important to keep that momentum and make it seem real to members, and make sure that management are giving enough resource to the project. Really hold their feet to the fire on the timeline and timeframes and stuff. In terms of members, we sent a survey out at the start of the trial and at the end to measure our own outcomes. Management have been quite honest in that the members might say things to their union reps that they might not say to management. So they've been quite open to that, actually, which is quite useful. Regular meetings with members who are on the trial. So the way I sort of look at it, if anyone does health and safety at work, we sort of almost like a risk assessment. Anybody, for any risk assessment, you get the people who do the job to engage in the process. They do the job day by day. They're experts in it. So we saw that as the same for those people on reduced working hours, 4-day-week trial. We wanted to speak to them to get them to figure out any issues or risks they were facing on the trial early, so we could collectively, as a union, get in front of it and think of any member-led solutions and counter any problems management tried to present during the trial. We also got members on the trial speaking to non-trial members, all member meetings and in all member comms, to show that it can work within the organisation. You know, these people are their colleagues and friends and stuff, and hopefully brings people along who aren't taking part on the trial with you in the campaign. One thing we found as well, one size doesn't fit all in your organisation if it has a variety of jobs with different needs. For example, somebody in my role, in my team, might differ from somebody in services to somebody in IT. So this might mean a 20% reduction will be different. So one team might just be Fridays off, another team might be rotated days every month because they need to cover reception. We didn't want perfect to be the enemy of good, and allow management to say, no, it can't be done in that one particular way, so it can't be done anywhere else. We really want to be flexible. But yeah, the usual organising things, really. Know where your members are, schedule meetings or comms to go out. Keep members involved in the campaign, because you're more than likely going to need to use pressure from members and leverage on management at some point to get what you want, which I think is something that Alex said at the stage that they're at in their campaign. So now I guess the bit that might be most interesting to the meeting: how's the trial going, and what do we expect to come next? So the trial, as I said, finished in January of this year. Management reported benefits from staff, and we got the same reports from our own survey. During the trial, management set some instances where there'll be pauses in different teams because of a loss of productivity. This didn't happen. There were no pauses because of a loss of productivity due to reducing working hours, which obviously is, you know, great news. At the same time, we've submitted our pay claim in November, and we're currently in negotiations. I was in negotiations today for 3 hours with management. And within that, we asked for trial data with joint analysis. We want to see exactly the same data as management. We don't want management to arrive at a decision on if it can or can't happen due to incorrect interpretation of data or finding a problem that we haven't had an opportunity to offer a solution for. We've secured this, which is great. The ability to present independently as a union to the executive leadership team and the board. They're the decision makers in the organisation, and we demand the ability to be able to present our own findings post-trial in the event where we and management disagree. We managed to secure that. And then the big one is the reduction in timeline. As I said, the organisation is large and it's complex, but they've proposed a timeline that we think is too long, and we've asked for that to be reduced so it remains tangible and real to members. If it's not going to happen for a few years, you know, a member's going to see the benefit of it, especially if you're accepting below inflation pay rises. So in terms of the decision if it'll take place or not, I'm slightly run over time. I'll be very quick. There are two main issues that we think are standing out at Shelter that might affect the decision. One is on part-time workers, as some people might struggle to do their job if their hours are reduced any lower than what they already have, and the need to potentially then bump their pay up slightly, and the potential effect that'll have on contracted services in terms of bidding and stuff. So in terms of part-time members, we've phone banked all our members before, so we know exactly who's part-time, and we're going to organise meetings with them to go over any issues relating to part-time workers and reduced working hours. And then in contracts, we're organising a subgroup of members who work in and around securing contracts, managing contracts. We can have frank discussions about what issues might arise from a 4-day week and contracted services, and what solutions we can find. And then we can present the outcomes of these sessions to management if they try to sort of present an outcome we disagree with, and also to members, and show members that we are doing the real detailed work and trying to make it work and bring them along with us. Winning the argument is obviously really important, and problem solving is, but without the sort of collective organisation, you know, that's where your real power and leverage comes from. So without that, management are much less likely to listen to you and take you seriously. So we've set members meetings for the next 4 months. We've phone banking list of members ready to go. We've done 2 rounds of phone banking in the last 3 months to all 600 members, which is a lot of time, but really worth it in making that ongoing personal connection with members and reps, but also members and the 4-day week campaign. If somebody's on the trial, keeping them aware of what's going on, the successes, the failures, all that stuff has really, really been beneficial for us. We're remapping the whole workplace and sending out recruitment emails. As I think as Phil said, you know, what a better way to recruit people than, you know, you can help secure a 4-day week. I know if I wasn't a member, I'd join with that as an offer. We've got activists in every workplace, making sure we're visible with our pay claim and 4-day week arguments. And then I'm quickly going to share my screen because my colleague Jess has made some incredible badges and ran a what does a 4-day week mean to you campaign, which members sent in some posters and stuff. I'll just share that with you. That should work. Can everyone see? So we have one of the posters here. Fight for a 4-day work week by joining Uniting Shelter. That's our little thing. And then if you guys can see that, it's a Microsoft Teams calendar with, you know, your general work tasks, and at the end you've got your Friday with rest, study, exercise, cook and eat a nice lunch. Sort of, you know, trying to show what your work calendar will look like once you've secured that thing. 4-day week. This is obviously the very famous Spider-Man meme. You've got one Spider-Man saying 4-day work week, the other one, all the benefits from a 4-day week, and then, you know, join to get a 4-day week. Then a couple of stickers that my mate Jess made, Union Rep Jess made, working 9 to 5, 4 days a week, and if anybody doesn't know, that is a reference to Dolly Parton, which I think is very good. And then another one, for a 4-day week, join Unite the Union. So there are ways. We're going to start our campaign, get campaign packs sent out to every workplace and every member, get badges on every member, and really apply pressure from management below, while also making those arguments at managerial level. So yeah, to make sure if they do try to give us a subpar offer or Palmer's offer the decision that we think is a result of an incorrect analysis, we're ready to use that leverage through ballots and collective action to get what we think members deserve. I've ran over time there, sorry, apologies, but thanks very much everyone for listening.
Thank you so much, Ben. Now, I think that's really interesting because, you know, what we try to do is to like share experience from reps that have already like practices. So, you know, people can take inspiration to go back to their workplaces. And we're going to jig it up a little bit in the format because we have run over time, but we still wanted people to have a bit of a chance to be in small breakout rooms. So I am actually not going to take questions straight away. And apologize, Delphine, I know you've got to leave at 8. But what we're going to do is I'm going to send you in breakout rooms for about 7 to 10 minutes. And you can discuss in small groups. Have you got any questions? Also, if you are campaigning for 4 days a week, you may want to have a little chat in your group and then share it when we come back. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. We will come back at 6 minutes by 8, and then we will take questions and contribution I will give a chance to the speakers who still stay with us till the end to come back for a couple of minutes as well. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms now, and you should get a little message on your screen asking you to join one. So we'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, so I can see a few people who are not in the breakout room yet. Is it because you're not sure how to do it, or maybe you were listening from afar?
It's because I don't want to go in the breakout room.
That's also fine. And also some people have left, so I am also sort of try to balance the number of people in each group.
Yeah, there was no one in the breakout room I ended up in anyway. So
Yeah, because I think some people, you know, when they hear the word breakout rooms, they just like disappear. So I'm
Get
just
out.
looking now to make sure that, you know, nobody is alone in a room. And because the speakers were set there, I just think it can be a bit of a distraction for people as well. So, yeah, so I've still got somebody alone. I'm moving them.
Sorry, I need to actually leave now, but thanks so much, Clara, and everyone. It was really good to hear from Alex and Ben. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much, Delphine. And if there was any questions for you, I will, you know, make sure I pass them on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye. I'm just looking. I've got somebody alone in the room, and I can't move them now. Okay. I might just go and see them.
Enough time.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go and see them. Are you just gonna wait here in here? Yeah.